Hello, my name is Francis Coliato, your Executive Director at Visual Communications. In our work to create spaces for expression, engagement, and empowerment, VC and our partners proudly present the Asian Pacific Virtual Showcase. It is our hope that this showcase of our stories will be a start for audiences to rediscover our humanity. In solidarity with our partners, our collective movements not only exhibit actions towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, but our anti-racist work to uplift storytellers who use the power of media to dismantle supremacist structures. Thank you for joining us today as we continue to move forward in uplifting and connecting our communities. Welcome to the Asian Pacific Virtual Showcase.
Hey everybody, my name is David Liu, and I am a Chinese American. I'm wearing a white knit sweater, and I'm sitting in my dining area. My favorite plant, my fiddle leaf fig, is sitting right behind me. And I'm calling in from Koreatown, Los Angeles, historic land of the Tongmas. And I am the director of NOODLE DELI, which is currently playing in the Asian Pacific Virtual Showcase. Hi, Meena.
Hi. I'm Meena Ramamurthy, and I am a South Asian American filmmaker. I am calling in today from Mission, Texas, which I don't know the exact indigenous land it's on, but it's several groups are here. And let's see, I am wearing a black t-shirt with an Andy Warhol banana print on it. And I'm in my office room, which is super messy. That's why my background is blurred. And I am super excited to be here with the VC community showcasing my web series, The FOB and I. Yeah.
So Meena, big question first. When did you want to become a filmmaker?
I think I was in middle school, and so my family, I grew up most of my life living in South Texas, so really close to the border. Back then it was mostly farmland, orange fields, and there wasn't a lot to do. So I would just write scripts and write skits and beg my dad to let me use his camcorder. And then I just have fun, playing with my friends and doing that. And then I think that's kind of basically when I decided I want to be a filmmaker. Yeah. What about you, David? When did you decide you wanted to be a filmmaker?
I think there are a lot of moments that I can point to, but I think the one moment was when I was about 11 or 12. I was growing up in an immigrant household in the San Gabriel Valley, and I think I was helping my mom prep green beans for dinner, and there was an old movie playing on the boxy CRT TV in our kitchen, and it was The Grapes of Wrath, the 1940 film by John Ford. And I distinctly remember it was the scene in the migrant camp where Henry Fonda takes his mom, played by Jane Darwell, for a dance. It's just sort of like an impromptu dance under the moonlight, and son and mother do the dance, and Henry Fonda is singing Red River Valley. And for some reason, there was just this moment of connection for me with cinema that it couldn't be wiped out since. And I think it was the magic of this little black and white movie playing on the screen that somehow made me feel like I was at home. So that was when I fell in love with cinema, and I think a little part of me decided that I wanted to make movies for the rest of my life.
Wow, amazing. Grapes of Wrath. So as you've gotten more into filmmaking, what's been your favorite part of the filmmaking process?
I think my favorite part of the filmmaking process is twofold. So I would definitely say screenwriting. That's kind of like where I come from. I always see screenwriting as almost like building a house, building a structure. And it's, when the foundation works, when everything starts flowing and, the space works, there's nothing that compares to that feeling. And I would say another part of the process that's kind of related is working with actors. There's something about, the magic of working with, amazing actors who are interpreting the material that you wrote, and this symbiotic relationship where you are guiding them through your material, but they're also, realizing the characters that you wrote on paper and breathing life into them. And to me, that's also just such a beautiful process that I don't think I can ever get tired of.
Totally.
What about you? What is your favorite part of the filmmaking process?
I'm a sucker for collaboration. So if it's in the writing process and I'm writing with a few friends, I love that. I also love working with actors. For me, like, when I think back to middle school and I think back to like working on those sketches and working on those short films with friends, I remember like I would go over to my friend's house and I would say, hey, do you want to work on the movie? And then I remember, my friend's mom saying, don't you want to ever come over to play? But that was like my version of play, and I really enjoy working with actors and just playing with the scene and, seeing where things take us. So, yeah.
I love it. What were you like as a kid? It's now, since we're talking about childhood, you mentioned a little bit about where you grew up, but would love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a young kid, I was more shy and I observed a lot, introspective, but I think that I am a social kid. I think, I'm not maybe like the popular kid, but I am the social kid. And I think I'm usually the funny kid, who, I mean, I think a lot of immigrant kids sometimes fall into this role where, oh, it's funny to make fun of this and funny to make fun of that. And I think it just kind of grew into just being the genuinely funny person of the group. So, yeah. What about you? Yeah.
I can relate to that a little bit, just in terms of the, being the shy kid, but not necessarily, a not social kid. Because I think I was definitely shy growing up. I had my eccentricities, I guess, so to speak. But I had a really close knit group of friends who I actually still, call up from time to time. I'm someone who really values my childhood friends. But in general, I think my childhood was, spent collecting things. I was a big collector of rocks, leaves, Hot Wheels cars, everything. And I'm still that way nowadays, actually. And haven't figured out why or how it will, impact my work, but it's how I grew up.
Wait, so what do you collect now? What's
Well, part of me is there's still, I guess there's still a kid in me, but I collect Lego architecture sets. Lego has this unique line of, architecture where they basically focus on famous structures from around the world. So that's something that I actually collect with my wife. And I collect physical media, so Blu-rays, 4K,
Sure.
things like that, where I can, just sort of know that it's pride of ownership, I guess, compared to streaming, where I know if a movie's going to come off at a certain time, I know that it's nice that I own it, can pop it in anytime.
Not be at the mercy of the corporation. Let's see. So a little bit for the audience at home, can you tell us what Noodle Deli is about?
Yeah, so Noodle Deli is a short documentary set in Temple City, which is a small suburb that's part of the San Gabriel Valley, historically a Asian American enclave. And it's kind of a day in the life, following a noodle chef around, as he sort of talks about his immigrant experience and also does a little bit of cooking. And we also sort of are introduced to his kitchen staff a little bit. And the special thing about this noodle place is that it's Northern Chinese. So they make, all kinds of noodle dishes. And one of the specialties is called knife cut noodles. So what it is basically, you hold a piece of dough over the fire and you slice each noodle off one by one. So it comes out really chewy, really good. It's actually from my home province in China, which is Shanxi. And so that's something that I think really attracted me, the very specific cultural aspect of it. But really, Noodle Deli is a love letter. It's a love letter to my childhood, the the rhythms and the smells and the sounds, you know, that I grew up with, you know, on my block. And yeah, it's you know, San Gabriel Valley in a nutshell, for me, and also, you know, just something that's really important to me.
Totally. I could watch making noodles all day. Such a fascinating process. And I loved the idioms in the film, you know, just that kind of Eastern storytelling dynamic. It was great.
Appreciate that. So back to you. What is the FOB and I? I want to, you know, what inspired you to make it, and you know, how did it come about?
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to make a comedy series that had two South Asian lead protagonists. Usually in modern sitcoms, you get like the one character. And I wanted to make sure these two characters represented different things and were just really different people. And so we created these really starkly different characters in these two cousins. And for me, like, I think we see a lot of immigrant narratives with the immigrant being uncool or just more conservative or having like a more, you know, backwards view of their culture, and really wanted to spin that on its head and show this dynamic, which I've seen so many times to be true, where the person raised in America is kind of stuck in old ways, and the person that's an immigrant is actually much more forward thinking, and just have those two characters and have that odd couple on screen, but just have them do fun, culturally specific things together in LA. So yeah.
I thought it was great that you said it in LA, because, you know, I think there's always so much to tell about the immigrant experience here. And even though, you know, you grew up in Texas, I think like that's a universal thing that you just described, which is, you know, how do we see the world, right, as first generation or second generation people. But let's talk a little bit about USC, since you and I are both alumni of the university, the film school specifically. I guess if you could describe one, if you could use one word to describe USC, what would it be?
This is a hard one.
Yeah.
I guess I would say a rush. And I'll kind of contextualize that by saying it's such like a period where you just push yourself to make so much content and just make things. You know, I find post-graduation I become much more precious with my work, which is sometimes good. Sometimes when you're in the rush of a school deadline, you don't get to take that time. But, you know, as a creative, you know, something a friend of mine tells me is like, creativity is like if you give yourself a glass of water, it just fills up whatever space you give it, you know. And so sometimes it's good to have those quick deadlines and just get work out. So that's what I would say, a rush. What about you, David? How would you describe it?
You actually, the word I would use to describe it, you actually said it, which would be push. It was always, you know, push is a verb and push is a noun, I guess, because I just felt like it was always go, go, go. You know, you start the program, and, you know, it's this community of like-minded people who everybody wants to make a mark in some way, you know, through expressing something. And my cohort was especially tight. I think all cohorts are pretty tight. And, you know, we fed off each other's ambition and energy and even empathy, I think, in terms of telling stories. And we pushed each other. It was always pushing, whether we knew it or not, you know. And, you know, at the end of the day, it was always really, really cool to be able to see, you know, your cohort's work and be like, that's pushing me to become a better filmmaker, to become a better storyteller, to become a better person, you know, find new ways to express what's already out there. So it's really just, you know, it was a push, and I think, you know, it's also a rush for sure.
Similar words. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about Noodle Deli. Just kind of curious how you came upon deciding to do a documentary on those business owners, and yeah, just kind of the story behind the project, and if you knew them before and all that good stuff.
Funny you should ask. I actually worked there a few summers. So I was, at first I was a busboy, and then, did some serving, service work. And the owner himself, he's actually a family friend. So he immigrated here before my parents did. They're from the same province in China. And, we had known that he was opening a restaurant. He had plans to do that for a while. And for him, it was just big change of career. He was doing something else back in China, business related as well, but definitely not food. And I think, that's something that always inspired me about him, because, he came here with nothing, basically starting over with his family. And he decided to basically use that as a way to, enrich his own, establish his own immigrant experience. So since I worked there, in high school and a little bit in college, summers from college, I always, I think, wanted to do a documentary. It wasn't conscious at first. I think like every day, when you're working in a restaurant, you're just so consumed by the everyday moment, the details and the moments that like in front of you every day. But I think every day when I come home, in the quiet of night, I'd be like, that's a place I want to tell a story about, and it can be a small thing, could be a big thing, but I just want to tell it because I loved it so much. So, and the opportunity came along when I took a critical studies class at USC, taught by Michael Renov, who is one of the vice deans of the school, big time documentary expert. Shout out Michael if you're watching this. Love you. And I think it was fun because it was a survey class about the history of nonfiction film, and it's something that I've always wanted to learn more about. And the end of the class was basically you could write a paper or you could go out there and shoot something. And of course, a lot of the production kids wanted to shoot something. A lot of the crit studies kids just wanted to write a paper. Both are amazing. And so I decided this was a time. And it was summer, and I figured I could capture a little bit of what I felt when I worked there over the past summers, and I just dove into it. So
yeah, what was so interesting about the film is I think people have all sorts of stereotypes of immigrant chefs and business owners, and like you said, like he started this was his second career, second country, and but he, despite all the challenges he faced in adjustment, he still spoke like so poetically about, his journey and everything that happened to him. So it was really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and it's always fun to share it like with the world. So I wanted to ask something about the FOB and I, which is about a specific person, Utera. She and I actually crossed paths quite a lot. She was just a cohort before me, and one of the best presences at school. I mean, we would see each other almost daily. So, how did you meet her, and how did you get to working together?
So, I put out a casting notice at USC. But it was a LA-wide casting notice. But it was difficult, not because there's not South Asian talent. There's tons of South Asian talent, but it's just they're not always accessible. They're not always working full time and acting. And it was really important to me to have someone that could help inform the character, someone who had lived in India for some time. And Uttara, I mean, everybody knows her. She's just like this warm ball of light. She's so outgoing and optimistic. She's kind of like almost like a SpongeBob character. You know what I mean? Like she brings joy to everything, So I knew that she would be like the perfect pair to Shafali, who plays our snarky cousin. But yeah, I mean, she was really a joy to work with, and 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 because this was, you know, something that we were discovering how to do it right. Like we had a writer's room and we would invite her, even though she was an actress, just be like, tell me, put me in my place. Like, tell me what would really happen. What would you really say? How would you code switch between Hindi and English? You know, so really just really great to have her there. And that's how she came involved. Yeah, she at the time was going to USC as well for production. I think she was a semester or two behind me, but
She was a semester or two behind you, so we could have crossed paths and just not known it. Yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, and they were both, you know, your actresses are both fantastic.
Thank you.
And it's the code switching that you brought up is interesting as well. I think you did a really good job exploring that. It's something that's, I think, relatable for a lot of us. A quick question: what's a favorite movie that you can watch over and over again?
I would say The Sound of Music. It's very cheesy, but I'm just gonna, this is the hill I die on. So here I am. What about you, David? What is your favorite movie?
Mine is quite a bit darker than yours. It's Zodiac by David Fincher.
Oof, that is, we couldn't be more opposites. All right, I'm into it. I'm into it. All right, so which would you rather do? Go on a hike, go to a nightclub, or go to sleep?
Go on a hike.
Yeah, totally. I'm there with you. I would totally do the hike. I think like this year has been about just like appreciating nature. So definitely I'm into the hiking.
Yeah. That's my answer, is because I have trouble sleeping sometimes. So I'm just, you know, it's nature all the way.
Do you go on night hikes?
I do not go on night hikes, although that would be cool. I haven't done a night hike in a while.
Seems dangerous, like outside.
Speaking of, so food and restaurants are a shared theme, I think, between our works. So I was curious, what's one of your favorite restaurants? And if you had a recommended dish, what would it be?
Gosh, it's so funny. My husband calls me Melp because he moved to LA from Philly, and he would point out a restaurant and I would be like, oh, I went there. So I've been to a lot of restaurants in LA, but gosh, my favorites, there's a Thai restaurant in Thai town in LA called Lacha Samtam that makes like a really delicious Penang curry and a really good pineapple fried rice. Just like delicious comfort food. So that's probably like one of my LA faves. Yeah. What about yourself? What's your favorite LA cuisine or restaurant? Yeah.
My favorite restaurant, I think, would be Chichen Itza. It's, you might know it. I mean, it's a Yucatan style Mexican restaurant near USC, actually. And you know, the owner, Gilberto, you know, he's amazing. He's one of, I think, like one of the more creative and amazing chefs in LA. Just the food there is to die for, and you know, especially their cochinita pibil, you know, either in taco or dish form, is just, it's always my go-to, I think, you know, after a few days.
This is why I miss this festival so much, because they always have the best food, you know. You know, as you come out of USC and everything, you know, where is your artist community and how did you find them?
I would say my artist community, a big part of it is VC, actually. And I think, you know, obviously it started with several of my films being accepted into the festival, and you know, attending the festival and meeting folks there and just meeting all the cool people who run it. Shout out to all of you. And because I think, in addition to, you know, visibility, I think it really enforced a sense of commonality between all of the very diverse subgroups of the Asian American community, Asian American Pacific Islander community. That's something that, you know, so I felt like we were all pushing each other forward in some ways. And I just loved, every year, you know, I love the festival, love the people. And I think, you know, also some of my fellow USC grads, I would say that, you know, that's still my community. My life partner, my wife, Singh, who's also an AWC fellow with me. You know, I met her at USC, and two of my closest friends, one is in the Bay Area and one is in New York now. Met them both at SC. We keep in touch pretty much every day over text message, and you know, checking in on each other's progress in terms of, you know, their work. It's some real stuff, and I you know, every day I'm sort of like, I'm very thankful to be able to continue that, you know, those friendships and see it blossom.
Nice.
What about you in terms of your community?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my artist community, like I have some friends from undergrad. I studied film at University of Texas, some friends that moved to LA, and I have my USC community. And now, you know, now I'm kind of delving more into the general LA artist community, which is, you know, it's not as easy to do. You don't have that crutch of being a school. But it's been nice now that I have been working at Netflix for a little while. I have that community too. So yeah, but you know, a lot of times it's like, you know, one thing you said that really struck with me, like, you know, you're kind of a person that keeps in touch with friends for a long time and is kind of that kind of loyal friend. And I feel like that person sometimes too. Like a lot of my community is the non-artists, you know, the friends that I've just had since grade school, and just you know, just there to chat and give you a little perspective.
That's so real. I mean, you know, two of my best friends, one of them is a public defender, so he went to law school, and the other one is a, you know, mechanical engineer. And sometimes it's you go to them, and you know, whenever you reunite, that perspective is so needed. I mean, especially when you're in LA, you know, and you're so in the middle of things in terms of the industry, in terms of the art form, you know, progression in your career. And those are the folks that I actually still pass, you know, my works to, actually, because I think that perspective is super valuable. You know, so somebody who's not necessarily, you know, diving into this industry every single day.
Right.
Yeah. Folks who can see the forest for the trees, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So, what are some words of encouragement you would share with aspiring filmmakers that are out there?
I always say that, you know, it's not me giving folks advice. It's me basically having a little more experience in messing up and learning from that. So I think, like, you know, if anything, I can, you know, I want to tell folks, as I try to tell myself all the time, is, you know, always listen to that gut feeling, whether you're writing, whether you're directing actors, whether you're working on an edit, you know, whether you're working with people, you know, in collaborations. You know, more often than not, I think gut feelings are the right ones because they're yours. They're personal to you. You know, you've spent, you know, years and, you know, decades building that, you know, sort of subconsciously. So I think as people, basically see yourself as people, like, you know, first and foremost, trust the gut feelings. Don't be afraid to be yourself and try things. You know, experimentation and trying things doesn't just end with film school. I think it's lifelong. You know, always be open to learning. So, you know, Michelangelo once said, you know, at the age of 85, that he was still learning. So I think if he could say that, then I don't think that any of us have an excuse.
Nice.
What about you? Love to hear some of your any words of encouragement that you might have for aspiring filmmakers.
I think something that I'm still getting more comfortable with myself is not being afraid to ask, just asking for things and just throwing asks out there and not getting wrapped up in what the response might be or the rejection. And then I think that for filmmakers that are, you know, just starting out, like, just acknowledging that it takes time, you know, it takes time to, like, feel comfortable doing this and to get that level, and also to make a financial career out of this. And like, it's not on you if you don't get a career right out of school or right out of XYZ. It's not that you're not talented or anything like that. I mean, there's so many systemic issues and problems with the industry, and that on top of how competitive it is on top of that and how long it takes to hone your craft, like I would just say being okay with the fact that it takes time. And I always think about like, you know, like people never get upset when a doctor takes like 10 years to become a doctor. You know what I mean? Because you know that there's that success at the end of the tunnel, and like people think of it as such a noble career. But you know, you should give all jobs that same luxury of time, because it takes that to develop them and to be great. So yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I think that is the perspective that I think we all need to hear, you know, myself included, in terms of, you know, treating this as a career and not being discouraged, although sometimes it's impossible to not feel a little discouraged, right? But always seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for that. That's really great. Did you move to LA for school, or were you here earlier?
I moved to LA for school. I kind of, you know, I think it was partially that feeling of like, I'm booking a one-way ticket, I got my bag kind of feeling, you know. I had been working in a different industry for a few years after undergrad, and I was
which industry?
I was working in healthcare. I was working for healthcare
yeah.
for about 3 years after undergrad. And I just, you know, I'm sure it's like the pandemic itch right now. We have to be creative, but we can't make films. It was like that, you know, but it was like for 3 years. And I was like, I gotta do it. So my intention was like USC acceptance or not, I'm just gonna move to LA, you know. But you know, it ended up getting the USC acceptance. So I had that to, you know, another reason to be there. But yeah, that's what brought me to LA. I mean, I think now, I mean, I'm excited about it's more possible to be a filmmaker from anywhere. You know, I mean, we're on a Zoom call right now, but in terms of community, it's you know, it's easier to find that in LA. So yeah. What about you? What brought you? Well, you were in San Gabriel, right? You're in San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, I grew up in the SGV, and then I went to Berkeley for undergrad. So briefly, you know, lived in Northern California, which I still love. It's like my second home. And I actually worked as a paralegal, you know, for a couple of years after school. So considering a little bit of, you know, consideration for a law career. And I think I was also trying to make stuff on the side at the same time, you know, working a full-time job, and it became really hard. And I thought, you know, this isn't, you know, it's not making me happy. You know, I love my coworkers at the law firm, you know, but I think the essence of it was that I feel like I needed to get down to LA, and, you know, it was a homecoming of sorts, but I also didn't know LA that well, you know, being an SGV kid, you know, we didn't come to the city that often. So it was fun, you know, to come back, and immediately, you know, I came back, essentially drove all my belongings down in my sedan, my Toyota Camry, and then the next week it was like the beginning of USC.
Right.
So It was crazy, you know, it was a crazy re-entry into my home area, I guess. But you bring up an interesting point, I think, about the pandemic, you know, changing the way we work. I think in terms of location, I wonder, you know, I wonder how, if it's going to stay like this, you know, or because I think as employers and organizations realize that, you know, folks can work from home and the productivity level isn't changed, and maybe it'll be even better for mental health. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the potential for artist communities to grow in areas that have a lower cost of living, you know, and makes it more accessible to more people. So, but we'll see, you know. But you know, I say that, but I'm like dying to get back to LA. You know, I say that both ways. Yeah. Well, David, it was lovely to chat with you and get to know you and your films and everything.
It was super lovely. This was lovely. You know, I can't believe this is the first time we're meeting each other, and I thought this was a great way to meet each other and to know each other a little better, especially in front of our audience as well. So goodbye till the next time we see each other, and goodbye everybody who's watching.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a Blu-ray of Sound of Music. You send me the Zodiac, and we'll have a
Oh,
swap.
absolutely. It's happening. The swap is happening.
All right, take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.